Nothing will crush a real estate investor's spirit like landlord stress. The difference between being successful and miserable in managing properties is education. Welcome to Landlord University, where landlords learn. Landlord University is recorded from inside the RentPrep office, where Stephen White and Jeff Pearson share the lessons learned from working with some of the most successful landlords.
Welcome to Landlord University. I'm Jeff Pearson, and this is my co-host,
Stephen White.
Hello, Stephen. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, Jeff. Very excited to have our guests on the line here today. It's going to be James and Brandon from Tenant Turner. And I've got a special place in my heart for Tenant Turner because they do some work with RentPrep, and I've seen these guys grow from the very beginning, and just watching them rack up all kinds of awards and recognitions for what they're doing. So we've been, wanting to have them on for a while, and really excited to have them here.
That's great. Well, let me do a little bit of an intro, let people understand a little bit about what they are and who they are, and we'll bring James and Brandon on. Tenant Turner is the fastest way for landlords and independent property managers to find quality tenants. The co-founders, James, Brandon, and Chris, became landlords in 2009, and they started Tenant Turner in 2013 to create a solution for the number one problem, filling vacancies quickly and with quality tenants. Their mission is to empower you to be the best landlord you can be by leveraging a simple paperless process that takes the guesswork out of leasing your property. In April of this year, they won Richmond's Best Startup Award, and in August, they were accepted into the Lighthouse Labs Startup Accelerator, providing them with $30,000 in grant money to invest in helping landlords. With James and Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. We're really excited to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note also that you guys mentioned that you're on vacation right now. You guys are spending some time in the Outer Banks, no doubt to reward the recent success that you guys had with the Lighthouse Lab Startup Accelerator.
That's right. Yeah, we come to the Outer Banks every year, and so it was nice place for us to get away, especially as things continue to ramp up with Tenant Turner, and we bring on more customers and help more landlords and fill vacancies. So nice to step away for a week.
Definitely. Well, very cool. Well, I'm excited to dive in and hear what you guys are up to, and let some of our landlord listeners know how Tenant Turner can help them.
I love the fact that you guys started as landlords. With Landlord University, it really helps for us to relate to our listeners when we're talking with people who started as landlords. So tell us a little bit about your path to becoming landlords back in 2009.
Yeah, so I became a landlord, and I'm in the accidental landlord category. I bought a townhome in Richmond in 2005, kind of at the height of the market, and as life went on and wives and kids and such things happened, we had grown out of that home, and my options were pretty much, sell it and write the bank a big check for what we were underwater on, or rent it and test the waters of being a landlord. Obviously, you know which direction we chose, and it's been very, very beneficial for us. We learned a lot throughout the process. We're really glad we made that decision, and it was one of those things that I liked being a landlord for about 300 so days out of the year, but there were about 2 months where when we were trying to turn the property, it was just a really big hassle. So turn some of our own trials and tribulations into a repeatable process that has helped us personally with our rental properties, but hopefully will help other landlords out there as well.
And so, other than being a landlord, which we definitely want to dive into a little bit deeper, what is it that was in your background that made Tenant Turner possible? You guys, obviously Tenant Turner is web-based, and it's an online platform. You guys had to have had some sort of history, employment history or something that had, that opened the doors for Tenant Turner to be possible.
It definitely. So we all come from a technology background. Myself, Brandon, I come from 7 years or so of consulting, technology and web consulting, mostly on the front end design, user experience side. James comes from a background of programming into business analysis, into product management. And our other co-founder, Chris, comes from a .NET backend and mobile development experience. So we all kind of have three related skill sets that have to do with getting something that's web-based out and succeeding in the market.
That's cool. And each of you have your own sort of specialty, in each specific, department or division there. So that's what makes it tick, huh? Each of you have your own part.
Exactly. It's kind of a yin yang yin situation.
Now, James, you mentioned that, in the process of you becoming a landlord and going through some of the things that, every landlord faces, which is filling vacancies, doing it quickly, and obviously getting those quality tenants. Dive into a little bit of some of the experiences that you were running into and what you did to overcome those.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anybody, and I imagine this is some of your listeners who's in, whether or not they're thinking about becoming a landlord because they want to buy an investment property or they're going to inherit a property that they're going to turn into a rental. It's scary. I mean, it's something that you are now charged with giving somebody that you really don't know the keys to one of the most expensive things that you will ever own. So in my case, it was a $150,000 townhouse. It was the most expensive thing that I've ever been a part of purchasing. I wouldn't, give a friend of a friend the keys to my car, and now I'm through this process and required to give somebody the keys to a $150,000 investment, and really didn't know how to find them, or how to weed out all of the people who come through Craigslist, and how to verify that they were going to be a good quality tenant once they moved in. So it was a very scary process. So even just getting started, you're kind of sitting there scratching your head and like, where do I even begin?
Yeah, definitely. And definitely scary, especially for first time landlords. Like you mentioned, I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's a huge investment. And yeah, you're essentially handing them the keys saying, I trust you.
Yep.
You got to make sure that you get the right person. So what are some of the things that you did right, and what are some of the things that you did wrong when you were trying to find that perfect tenant?
Yeah, I would say between Chris, Brandon, and myself, we all did a couple of things right, and we all did a couple of things wrong, and all of those things helped influence what Tenant Turner is today. I think one of the things that Brandon did right, and he was the first one of us to become a landlord, was he took the time. He took the time to make sure it was a quality person who was moving into his property, and something that I have done in the past and learned from that mistake is I didn't take the time. I was so focused on quickness, I didn't think about quality, and in doing so, it creates kind of a negative situation. And as you guys know, the hardest thing is, once you have somebody in there, is to get them out, if in fact you do want to get them out. So luckily, I didn't have to go through an eviction process, but something I learned firsthand was really focusing on the quality side, of the equation.
Yeah, and you're right. It's something that we talk about all the time on the show. Is be picky in that screening process, because once you make
Absolutely.
that decision, that is it's a tough page to turn beyond that, because it's not easy to get people out. You got to make sure that you're comfortable with that decision you made, and it was the right one.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee, but you got to do your diligence. You got to put in that time
Yeah.
to search and find the quality ones for sure.
Exactly, and that's a large part why we partnered with RentPrep, was just the quality of the reports that are provided that can help verify the tenants that we find in pre-screen. Certainly put us at ease as landlords, being able to review what Tenant Turner provides in context of those RentPrep reports, but also making sure that our customers are getting the information that they need so that they can be confident in that decision.
Yeah, and so take me through uh, some of the realizations that you had, where the idea of Tenant Turner was coming about, and how you wanted to bring that to be able to help other landlords.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things that, after the first time I founded a tenant, I was, like I said, I was a bit lost in the overall process. We got somebody in, they stayed for about a year and a half of their 2-year lease, and then it was okay. Now we need to find somebody else, and it was immediately like starting over. I felt like there really wasn't much that I can translate from the first time to the second time, because each prospective tenant is going to come to you with, some unique need. Same thing with the time of year. I mean, depending upon whether or not you're in the peak season amongst the renting frenzy of March, April, May, or into the summer, or if you're forced to try to get a tenant in during the winter slow months. So there's a lot of uniqueness to the process each time you run through it. And so after a couple of turns, one of the big things that we wanted to be able to provide through Tenant Turner is a repeatable process. And by using technology to automate a lot of those items, and to make it repeatable in a very consistent and simple way was one of the critical things we wanted to bring to landlords.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I learned through the process is I basically started with Craigslist, just advertising on Craigslist, and it got me some interesting responses, some good and some not so good, but I didn't really look beyond there, and so doing it more often and going for the next turn, look to a place like Zillow or Hotpads and some of those other options that are out there that as a novice landlord I didn't really think about. I just knew that Craigslist was out there, and one of the things that we built into the process on Tenant Turner is automated marketing that is broader than what a first time or second time landlord may look at.
Yeah, and that's something that we cover here on the show a lot is the marketing aspect and really how important that is in finding a quality tenant. I mean, you have to have solid marketing in place. You have to have a good response rate to be able to, to have a good selection pool. So, how does Tenant Turner help landlords with that process?
Yeah, the big thing that we do is we allow all of the marketing to be centralized through Tenant Turner. So instead of having to go to Craigslist and then get email responses or phone calls and then having to go to Zillow and get emails from Zillow and then go to Trulia, which requires you to log back in because of the anonymized email addresses, you can centralize everything through Tenant Turner, and you only have to add your property once, and that's forever. So whether it's this turn that you're focused on now, or the turn 12 months from now, or 2 years from now, you can come to one place. You can market your property. We'll review it from a copywriting perspective to ensure that you're putting the best foot forward, have proper spelling, grammar, and are providing information that's relevant to today's renter population. And then we'll also go ahead and make sure that we're protecting you and that your property description aligns with the federal fair housing laws. So we centralize all that information, and then through API integrations and XML feeds, we're able to distribute it out to dozens of different rental websites, including Craigslist, Zillow, Hotpads, Trulia, and many others that most landlords have never heard of, but we're still seeing good quality renter traffic come from those places. So really focused on casting a wider net. But then obviously when you cast a wider net, you need to have really good policies for weeding people out. And that's where our unique two-step pre-qualification comes in to be able to filter people out who don't meet that landlord's requirements.
I want to go into that two-step process, but I'd like to go back a little bit. You talked about copywriting. Landlords, when they're writing their own stuff, they're writing, based on their experience, knowledge and experience of writing, which can cover any ends of the spectrum. But you also touched on the fact that you guys take in, current market conditions. What are people focusing on? Are you really highlighting the fact that you have all of those olive green appliances, or are you really putting the focus on the fact that you have an open floor plan? Mm-hmm. And at different times, different ones of those might make most sense to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And different times and different people. I mean, you think of the different types of renters that come across. I mean, you think of a single mother of two, making sure that she has an open floor plan while she cooks dinner. She can watch the kids play in the living room. That's going to be critical to that person. You have a young professional couple who's going to be moving in together for the first time. Those upgraded appliances and the granite countertops are the things that are really going to resonate with them. So finding a way to capture the information about a person's property, highlighting it appropriately for the audience that we're trying to target, is of the utmost criticality. Because if you put out a quality property, but in a poor quality property listing, nobody's going to know it exists, and they're not going to contact you, and you're not going to be able to cast that wide net.
Exactly. So let's go back to the two-step process that you were talking about.
Yeah, and what we really like to do is, like I said, we want to make sure that we're getting your property out in the appropriate places with the right type of property description, and that alone is going to drive a certain degree of quality. The higher the quality of your property listing, the higher the quality of people are who are going to come through. Another part of that is setting expectations with people. So making sure that if you won't rent to pets and you won't ever do that, regardless of the scenario, making sure that it's clearly stated. You don't want to be contacted by somebody who might otherwise seem like a good fit. Show them the property just to find out that they have a pet that you're not going to allow no matter what. So making sure that we set the expectations early and often, but then also making sure that we drive everybody through a consistent pre-qualification process. So we're looking for information from prospective renters that is easy for them to find or have readily available, whether it's their annual income, whether or not they ever been evicted or have felonies or been filed for bankruptcy, how many people are going to be living at the property, whether or not they have any pets. And through that, we can generate a tenant match score, which takes into account the requirements that the property owner has in context of the different people who are interested in that property. And those folks with the highest tenant match score are the ones that we really recommend for people to contact and schedule showings with.
Okay. So when a landlord is looking to work with you guys, they get signed up, you get all of the pertinent information regarding their property, and then you run the ads and you screen through the prospective tenants and you determine a certain number that you think it would be appropriate for them that they show the property to those tenants. Is that kind of the way that it works?
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. When they add their property to our site, they have to provide us information about their property, but in doing so, they also have to tell us what their requirements are. And really, what we're looking for: what are the things that you're flexible on, and what are the things that are hard rules that you won't break. So, for example, I will never rent to somebody who's been evicted in the past, and in doing so, we can make sure that we filter out anybody who comes through and indicates that they have an eviction.
And
That
then,
makes sense. Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Steve.
it definitely makes sense. And then obviously the background checks that are being ran behind the scenes with it as well is just confirming that information, just to be sure that obviously we see it a lot here at RentPrep where somebody claims to have never been evicted, and then
Yeah,
lo and behold, they're going through the eviction process now, or they just went
exactly.
through it. So yeah, and I love the idea of that pre-screening there. That way you're not wasting time with the obvious no's, which I think is what a lot of landlords get frustrated with. You
Yep,
might get a good response, but it doesn't mean that you're getting a good quality response. So
exactly.
I love the idea that you guys are helping landlords build those ads, and you guys obviously know what's getting a good response. So it's really beneficial for the landlord to be able to sort of piggyback off of your expertise in this field now.
That's right. And really the thing is we can do it at a macro level, and we're dedicated to making sure that this is the best process that it can be. So a lot of our customers come to us with backgrounds, obviously not technical, not in real estate, not in marketing or copywriting or anything of that nature. And so they have no idea how to write a posting, and they only have to do it every 12 months because they only have one or two properties that turn every 1 to 2 years. So because we're doing this on a daily basis for many different landlords, we're able to identify what are the macro trends within the rental marketplace and be able to apply it down to each of our customers in a very consistent way.
I love it. And Jeff, so many times you and I have talked about it on the show too, where it's that again, the marketing is such an important element of the screening process and finding that quality tenant. I really think that's where, at least for me, when I'm seeing where Tenant Turner shines. I mean,
Yes.
that's a huge element to be able to say, listen, we're going to put our expertise, our knowledge into this. And too many times I've talked to landlords that have said, well, I got one response from my Craigslist ad, and they're running that one background check at a time, and
Yep,
then you start to try and make things fit when they shouldn't fit. You're
Hmm.
more
exactly.
you're more willing to overlook an eviction, or you're
Yep.
willing to listen to why they have a violent crime in their history and saying, well, I don't know, it's the only guy I had apply, so
Yep.
maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
The only way when we constantly are hammering on this is the only way to get that quality tenant is to increase your selection pool. You have to have a
That's
good,
right.
you have to have a good number of people to choose from to find that best fit. It just doesn't happen on the first shot usually.
Yeah. From an advertising standpoint, what have you guys found has worked well or best for you to help cast that wide net?
I mean, definitely creating the different feeds that we have of our properties helps us automate things for our customers. So again, if you have a property and you have to go out to Craigslist, that's obviously going to be a completely separate interface than what Zillow provides, which is going to be a completely separate interface from what Trulia provides, which is a completely separate interface from what Homes.com provides. And again, I think we've kind of talked about it, that people just aren't going to go to that many places. They either don't know that they exist, like Brandon had talked about, starting with Craigslist, but not leveraging the others. Or if they do, it becomes such a hassle that they don't maintain it. And one thing that we've definitely learned through this process is that it's not a set it and forget it type of activity. Craigslist, for example, lets you bump your posting every 48 hours. Most people, again, either don't know that or don't have time to continue to bump that posting. And if you're not seeing the type of interest in your property that you would expect, well, like any other sort of advertising, you need to make sure that you're modifying what it is that you're focusing on. As we talked about before, maybe it's a different amenity for this particular locale that's really going to drive people's interest in this property. So being able to stay on top of that on behalf of our landlord customers who are focused on their families, their day jobs, their other obligations, we're able to make sure that we can continue to keep that app flow up and the interest where it needs to be.
Right. And for the people who don't understand, with Craigslist bumping the ad, you essentially can go in and repost it so that it goes back to the top of the list. And then over 48 hours, it will flow down to the bottom as more and more people put ads above yours.
That's right. Yeah. And with Craigslist being at the top of the list is obviously critical. And what we found with the other sites, particularly Zillow, HotPads, we offer our customers at no additional charge premium verified listings. So that's something that they can't even purchase on their own. Which is going to draw a lot more attention from prospective renters, because as you guys know, there's a lot of scams out there on both sides of the renter or the landlord side. So making sure that prospective renters see that our listings are coming from a verified source increases the amount of interest that are going to be on those postings.
Right. And have you guys found with the Craigslist postings, is there a particular time of day that it's best to bump those or to post them?
Yeah, one of the things, it's an interesting balance. We monitor it pretty heavily. So, for example, we don't ever bump on a Sunday because there's never really anybody out there looking for properties. Monday morning is a great time to bump, but everybody else does that as well. So one of the things that we do, and if there's people out there listening that just use Craigslist, really Monday right before lunch always seems to be a great time to be able to bump. And then also, for whatever reason, Thursdays are great days to bump, and you can do that in the morning. I think there's less people who are posting, but there's a lot of interest in people looking for things on Thursday so that they can set up showings for the weekend.
And for people that are trying to do it themselves, the fact that they have to find all of these different best times to do it can make it rather frustrating, which again
That's
brings
right.
us
Yeah.
back
So
to having the professionals take care of that for you.
exactly. So when somebody's in their weekly status meeting at 11 a.m. on Monday, we're actively trying to figure out when to bump those properties. Same thing on Thursday. It's that Thursday lunch meeting. That's when we're also working to bump those properties and continue to get them out to different rental websites.
Right. Now, one of the things you guys do is make sure that you have each of the listings reviewed to make sure that they pass fair housing guidelines. What type of mistakes can people make in fair housing law?
Yeah, it's unfortunately not as uncommon as we'd like, but people will just casually put in who their ideal tenant is, and in doing so, you're all but explicitly stating who's not your ideal tenant. And so what we really try to do is to to update those types of listings to ensure that you're not calling out anybody explicitly as your ideal tenant. We'll only rent to young professionals, obviously indicating age, which is a protected class under fair housing. And also in this, luckily you don't see as often, but any sort of explicit discrimination within your postings, which can deter people from your property if you're being offensive, but then also put you in a compliance concern with federal fair housing laws.
Right. Stephen and I actually just recorded our first episode of Landlord University in the News, which we're going to release on Tuesdays. And one of the articles that we talked about was a landlord who had a property that he wanted to be exclusive for young professionals and young married couples, which excludes children.
Yeah.
And he got hit for the children part because there was a couple who was applying and it turns out she was pregnant. And they said, yeah, we would have to evict you in December when you have the kids. So we might as well just stop here. And they thought that was a great concept. They, the landlords, turns out it wasn't so great because they were discriminating on the factor of the child. But they didn't even go into the idea that their focus was on young professionals and single married couples. So were they discriminating against non-married couples who were trying to rent there? So those are little things that can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And most people, they probably do it innocently. They have no desire to discriminate. They're probably just thinking to themselves, what is my neighborhood makeup? Who would be a good fit here? Who would I feel comfortable with because they're more like me? But when it comes down to it, I mean, we have to sometimes protect our landlords from themselves, making sure that they don't discriminate against prospective tenants.
Yeah, and I think, like we had discussed on the episode of in the news, ignorance doesn't count. You can't claim ignorance and say, "Well, I didn't know." And this landlord fought adamantly in several quoted statements that they had in there that what he was doing wasn't discriminatory, and he even had stuff on his website as far as who he would only rent to.
Yeah.
So exactly, and I don't believe that he was doing it maliciously. He was basing it on market research that said, this area, there needs to be more, what was it, Jeff? Single room housing for married couples or whatever. Well, he translated that into, well, that's the only people I'm going to rent to.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, again, just sort of his ignorance of the law, but that doesn't save him from paying penalties for fair housing violations. And I love the fact that you guys are checking that stuff and keeping landlords compliant. That's excellent.
Yeah, it was it reminds me of a comment that one of our customers had provided to us. Like the Tenant Turner provides them the protection that they didn't even know they needed. And unfortunately for some people, they won't even know that they need it until it's too late. Whenever something is brought to their attention, whether it's from an agency of the government that is going to come down on them, or in the case of bringing in a poor quality tenant. Having a repeatable process to help things get your properties leased is going to be helpful for those people, especially those novice landlords who are going to be more likely to make a mistake like that.
Right. Well, and another thing that we are constantly stressing to landlords at RentPrep is you have to understand what your screening criteria is. So I think that process of making the landlord make those decisions ahead of time. That's something that we're constantly trying to get landlords to do. I love the way that Tenant Turner kind of forces them into that, because you really have to know that going into it. You can't start accepting applications and dealing with them each kind of as a one-off. Well, let me look at this guy. Let me look at that guy. You got to know your standards ahead of time. You got to know, like you had mentioned, what's going to be a hard no. An eviction, that's the perfect hard no. If somebody's been evicted once, they're much more likely to go through that process again because that fear of the unknown is now gone. So, there's no point in trying to, accept applicants that have gone through that process. And then what, you're going to put the time into, contemplating each and every person that's gone through the eviction and look at their situation and make a decision. It's easier to have that screening criteria in place and say, here's our hard no's, here's our possibly yeses, and you're filtering those ahead of time, and then you can get down into the background check and really see. And something that we're talking about all the time, the background check should be after the pre-screening, and I think too many people are putting it before the pre-screening. That is their pre-screening. They're running that background check as the pre-screening, but there's so much that goes into making that selection without even needing a background check.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and we always recommend to our customers to ensure that they do run a more formal background check. But having the pre-screener is what's going to create the efficiencies and consistencies for them earlier on in the process.
Yeah. Well, I'm never shocked by the amount of people that will just flat out lie too and say, "Well, no,
Yep.
I've never been evicted," or we just had a situation earlier today where somebody had 3 evictions and claimed none of them were them, and they don't know what they're talking about. And
Yep.
we ended up having to call the property management company, who confirmed very clearly, "Oh yeah, that definitely happened." So,
Yep.
some of them will deny it to the very end.
Oh yeah.
Even with proof in their face. But yeah, you have to you have to take that step of that due diligence and actually verify the information that they're providing to you. So that's a critical step that you can't skip either.
Yep. Yeah, and we've found that people are extremely honest on the pre-qualifier, but there have been a couple of times where they've definitely misled the landlord about certain things. And in one case, the person misled because they actually stolen somebody else's identity, and that actually was returned through the RentPrep report. So everything that they had said about their stolen identity was 100% accurate. But not until the background check was run was it surfaced that the identity that they were using was in fact stolen.
Right. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. We see it a lot. And, on even more unfortunate, the tenants that are out there doing it, they're not strangers to it. I mean, they're pretty
Oh
good.
yeah.
They're pretty sophisticated with it.
Oh
They're
yeah.
not, this isn't their first rodeo. They usually know going into it
Yep.
what they're going to need to say, what they're going to need to provide, to do the same thing to you that they've done in the past, and have gotten away with it. So, yeah, you can't. There's no limit to how much you really have to protect yourself.
Yep.
So another one of the things that you guys are doing, is you're taking sort of the application process and you're streamlining that for not only the tenants but for the landlords. Can you jump into that a little and tell us how that works, and how people respond to these ads that are being posted all over?
Yeah, the thing that we do is we drive everybody through the online application or the online pre-screener. So it doesn't matter and it's something we haven't talked a lot about here, but we handle all the emails, phone calls, in addition to any of the pre-screening. So we drive everybody through the same process, whether that's a prospective tenant who saw an ad and wanted to call our 800 number instead of filling out the form directly. We can work with them to help answer any questions about the property so that the property owner doesn't have to do that. We can help fill out the pre-screener on their behalf. And then we drive everybody through that process. And as a landlord myself, knowing how kind of confusing it can be. You talk to 12 different people at 12 different times via email, some form from some different rental website, phone calls, text messages. It's nice to be able to consolidate everything through the standard process. So everybody will go through the online application. So from the landlord's perspective, they're going to get a very consistent view of everyone, regardless of how they heard about their property, or how the form itself actually got filled out.
Yeah, that's awesome that you guys even are taking the phone calls and calls coming in, and you guys have enough information, just from that listing, and sort of that the information that the landlord's providing about the property, that you guys can intelligently answer their questions. And again, that's an extra step that the landlord doesn't have to do or have to worry about.
Yeah, and the big thing there is that if you don't respond to these people, or if you don't answer their questions, I mean, sometimes it feels like if you don't do it instantly, you've lost them,
Hmm.
because it's a supply and demand issue. There's any number of different properties out there. All of the prospective renters that we talk to are applying or asking about or interested in any number of different properties. It's a more transient world than when you buy a place. So it's really important for, again, while that landlord is in that meeting or at dinner with their wife or on vacation, our team is actively answering the phone calls, responding to the emails, and quickly getting those leads into the Tenant Turner system and getting the pre-qualification information secured.
Love it. Now, once that landlord has the opportunity to select the person that they want, what are the steps there for actually initiating the whole lease process, and getting that tenant in touch with the landlord themselves?
The first thing we do is we notify the landlord via email that somebody is interested in their property. We have a comment section that helps facilitate the scheduling process between the landlord and the prospective renter. And then I think we touched on it earlier, but we also offer a tenant match score. So if it's a scale of 0 to 10. So if you, as a landlord, get a notification that somebody who's a 10 is interested in your property, and that's somebody that Tenant Turner is recommending you reach out to, our hope there is that you'll quickly schedule a showing with that individual. And then once you've shown the property to that person, you've had an introduction to them, and you've performed your gut check to see if you think they're going to be a good fit for your investment property. We also offer the RentPrep background checks. And from the landlord's perspective, it's very quick. We have the information that we collected about the tenant through the pre-screener. So they just simply initiate the background check. The prospective tenant will pay the application fee. And then the landlord will be notified of when the RentPrep report is available for them to view.
Love it. Yeah. And it really is a nice seamless process. It's something that I wish that a lot more landlords would get comfortable doing. It's always a double-edged sword. On one hand, the landlord wants, to have an easy process. And then on the other hand, something as simple as just re-entering that information just to run the background checks become, this huge daunting task for them. So I love that information is all translated seamlessly right over to us at RentPrep, and then we've got everything that we need, and there's no additional steps for that landlord to do. That's one of the features that really grabbed my attention when you guys first reached out, and I thought that's fantastic. That addresses so many pain points for landlords. As ridiculous as it may seem, it's only a couple of lines to enter, but like you said, it just becomes daunting because you have to repeat it over and over and
Yep.
over, just like those listing ads and things like that. So, anytime you can work smarter and not harder is beneficial for the landlord for sure.
Definitely.
Exactly. And that's why, like, having a guy like Brandon, who's a user experience expert. We know from the different systems that we've implemented in the past, whether they're, big intranets for Fortune 500 financial institutions or other consulting gigs that we've done in the past, every additional click you require somebody to do means that there's going to be some sort of drop off. And that's what we're ultimately trying to eliminate. The more simple we can make the process, the more seamless we can make the integrations, the more likely people are going to do the things that they should be doing.
Yeah. So what's the future of Tenant Turner? What are you guys, especially with, the grant that you were just awarded through the Lighthouse Lab Startup Accelerator? Tell us about some of the exciting stuff you guys are working on and what some of the future plans are.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, anytime you're running a business, there's a lot to do, especially as you have customers, because you want to continue to take their feedback and improve the product and process for them. So something we're always on the lookout for are different companies that we can partner with to market our customers' rental listings. So we've talked about some of the places we put properties out. One of the new partnerships we're establishing now is with the Homes.com network of sites, which is, again, a place where independent property owners can't even put their homes because it's more tied to realtors and real estate networks. So we're opening up different doors for our independent property owners to be able to have their listings on those sites, and again, just casting that wider net of more prospective renters. And we're going to continue to iterate on our tenant match score, really driving home the importance of quality. So the bigger the net we can cast, the more stringent we can get when it comes to defining what a quality renter is for our customers, and helping them make sure that they're picking the right folks for their property.
And how much work have you done to follow up with the landlords who use your service down the road, 6 months or 12 months down the road, to find out how things worked out with those tenants?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the big things that we want to build back more programmatically is a feedback loop to on both sides, the landlord and the tenant side. We want to know from the tenant's perspective, is the property of of the quality that they expected? Is their interaction with the landlord what they had hoped for, or are they putting in maintenance requests and they're going unanswered? So one of the things that we hope to integrate in with the product is this feedback loop from both sides. Is the tenant as high of a quality of a person as we told you that they were? And also, is the landlord giving, providing the guest experience that you as the tenant had hoped for?
That's great.
Yeah, and certainly valuable for the landlord too. I mean, sometimes landlords need that that in your face approach of, listen, this is the feedback that we got. You're dropping the ball. You're this is you're missing the mark here. This is something
Yep.
that you need to improve, in your business. And this is I think having that ability to give them that feedback directly from the tenant is great too. So, is that something that you're looking at the tenant can do any time, or is it after a 6 month or after a 1 year, or can the tenant at any point in time log on and sort of log a complaint against the landlord?
There'd be certain times in particular that we would want to nudge the prospective tenant or tenant to provide feedback. One of the areas that we tested and was valuable on both sides was the showing. I think, like you said, like landlords sometimes are blind to the process, and they didn't even know that the carpet. The fact that the carpet is stained in the living room has been a consistent pain point for the three people that they've shown the property to. Well, if that's the case, you either make sure that you bring somebody in that's going to clean the carpet or replace the carpet before you show it again, because otherwise nobody's going to get to the point of signing that lease. So there's particular points where we want to be able to nudge either side into providing feedback. That real-time feedback that will be helpful for both parties, but it could be one of those things that at any moment they could provide some feedback on either side.
That's excellent. Yeah, it reminds me of one of those shows that you see on HGTV or whatever, where they have the hidden camera and they're doing a showing, and it kind of reveals all the problems and what people are focusing on. And you're right, the landlords, especially during the showing, they got that kind of sort of tunnel vision of what they're looking for, and there's so many things on their mind. They're going to miss that stain in the carpet. They're going to miss those little things that, like you said, are going to be pain points for almost anybody. So pointing them out, helping that landlord, and then helping that landlord to resolve that, to move past it is awesome.
Yeah, and from the other side, from the prospective tenant side, them talking directly to the landlord to say, hey, I didn't like this, or I didn't like that, or I think your price is too high. They're not going to necessarily feel comfortable in doing that most of the time. And so kind of anonymizing it a little bit through the interface of Tenant Turner helps them be a little more honest and getting more honest feedback directly to the landlord.
Definitely. It's the hidden camera notion, right? So they don't know. And yeah, exactly. Make it anonymous, and then you're going to get a much more honest feedback and say, exactly what you thought and exactly, the problems that you saw. So I love it. So who is Tenant Turner available to right now?
Tenant Turner is available to any landlord or independent property manager nationwide. We've helped people. Obviously, we're headquartered in Richmond, Virginia, but we've helped people in other states, in Tennessee and Kentucky and Montana, California, New York. So we're not geographically restricted at all, and definitely encourage folks, if you don't have a vacancy right now, come to Tenant Turner, add your property. You'll see how simple and easy the process is, and when the time comes, it's a flick of a switch to activate it and to start syndicating your listing out to places. And if you do have a vacancy right now, we're very passionate about helping you fill it, and we'll do everything in our power to make sure that we do that in a timely fashion.
And are you guys still actively involved in being landlords and continuing to invest in real estate? Is that something that you guys are going to continue doing alongside of running Tenant Turner?
We are, yeah. For the foreseeable future, I think we're all in that boat. I have one property. James has two, and our other co-founder Chris has two as well.
Yeah.
So we're all still in the market and getting those one-on-one experiences as landlords.
Yeah.
And that's been definitely a help to understanding what's going on with the problems with landlords and tenants.
And I would say having Tenant Turner, I mean, we'd be silly to not be landlords at this point. Tenant Turner has made being a landlord so easy, and with the RentPrep integration, I mean, what else as a landlord could I ask for? So now would be a horrible time to get out of the landlord business.
Right. Well, now, yeah, exactly. Now you got your ear to the ground. I mean, you guys know exactly what's going on, and I'm sure that like you said, not only are your success is translating into features on Tenant Turner, but you guys are learning along the way, and it's definitely going to make you better landlords throughout that process. And so your success as landlords, no doubt, is going to continue to improve as you guys kind of make this journey along. And it's exciting to watch. Like I said, I've watched you guys from the beginning. You guys are the epitome of an entrepreneur, which Jeff and I can very closely relate to. And you guys have that entrepreneurial spirit, which I think most landlords do. So it was, I don't think it was a big leap, for you guys to jump from landlords to starting this business. I think, most landlords need to have sort of, that entrepreneur DNA to get into the sort of risk taking that you need to get into. But it's been great to watch you guys evolve and watch Tenant Turner grow. And we're definitely excited to see, where you guys end up next.
That's great. Yeah, we definitely appreciate the support and the partnership, and look forward to many, many years of a successful relationship.
And just so that people know, Tenant Turner is at tenantturner.com.
That's correct.
Want to be sure they can find you.
That's right. Yep. tenantturner.com. Like I said, come check us out, and really easy to add your property. You can do it in just a few steps. And even if you're not actively looking right now, sign up for our newsletter, and we'll continue to provide tips for landlords and independent property managers focused really on filling vacancies quickly with quality tenants.
Right. And as you mentioned a few minutes ago, you might not be looking for a tenant right now, but put your property on now, get things set up and ready to go, because you never know. Your tenant could be turning in their notice tomorrow. And if the property's there, it's just like flipping a switch at that point, and it makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Activate it, and then it goes from there, and we take care of the rest.
Perfect. Well, James and Brandon, thank you very much for joining us today on Landlord University, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Landlord University, and remember to visit rentprep.com/landlordu to see show notes and access free resources like forms and guides. And be sure to check out Jeff Pearson hosting his own hit podcast,